We'll go looking
right.
at Steve in the bottom. Dave Sullivan is a professional engineer with SLR. I'll let him tell you more about himself and the evaluation he did on the Mungertown property that we're looking at putting the elementary school at. So without any more information, Dave, please take over.
Sure, thank you. I appreciate the opportunity to be here tonight and to give you a brief summary. I have a PowerPoint prepared, which will go through some things that hopefully at a level that you get a good flavor of our study and our findings, and be happy to drill down on anything more at that point. But yes, I'm with SLR. We were formerly, as of a couple of years ago, Milone and McBroom. Some of you may know us more readily as Milone and McBroom, but we are SLR now, and we're happy to be here. So with no further ado, let me try to share my screen here and see how this works out.
Perfect.
Beautiful. Now let me get this toolbar out of the way here and start the slideshow. Okay, can we all see that?
Yes, I can.
Okay.
Can the board?
Yes, we can. Thank you.
Okay, great.
That's good.
So this first slide is just to give you a flavor of the study that we conducted. On the right side, you'll see the existing Jeffrey Elementary School in the blue star, and the red star, the proposed elementary school off of Mungertown Road. So to do this study, we first collected available traffic data at the 5 intersections you see circled in blue. We next looked at to get some characteristics of the demographics of the school from a traffic standpoint. We observed the Jeffrey School to look at their operations. They then estimated the future conditions based on some of those demographics at the larger proposed elementary school. We then developed future traffic volume scenario where we took off the traffic from the Jeffrey School, added that on to the Mungertown site, plus the additional traffic for the larger school proposed there. We then did our series of analyses to determine the traffic impact at the nearby intersections, those 5 intersections in blue. Once we completed the traffic evaluation, we then did an evaluation of the active transportation opportunities, more specifically sidewalks, and where some sidewalks could be provided and what the constraints might be, and made a series of recommendations. So the first thing, if you look at the next slide here, this is what we found at Jeffrey Elementary School. Currently, there's a teacher population of 85, a student population of 350 students, and they service kindergarten through 3rd grade. 40% of the students, round numbers, are picked up and dropped off by either a parent or a guardian. 60% are bused, and the walkers and bikers are really negligible. We did see a little bit of pedestrian activity, but they weren't really walkers. We think from what we could tell from our observations, they just happen to be walking through our intersections on their way to getting picked up by a car that might not have been directly on site. So the statistics are all laid out in the table of the number of parent cars, which are pick up and drop off, number of staff cars, which are the related to the staff population, and the number of buses. Next, we took those statistics and prorated them for the increase. And in this particular case, the teacher population was increased to 125, student population to 625, And as you know, the new school would serve the pre-K through 5th grade. And the statistics in the table of the traffic that we analyzed, if you were to look back, it's a significant increase. I think it was of the magnitude of about 75% increase over what's happening at Jeffrey School now. So then we developed the future traffic volumes, and this just talks about how we do that. We did do traffic counts at the intersections, those 5 intersections. We did it on a normal school day, or as normal as they get these days, November 18th. We do the count for an extended period, usually 2 hours, that cover the arrival and dismissal times, and then we take the highest hour of traffic out of those longer period counts. We then grow those volumes to a projection of an opening year. In this particular case, we went out 4 years at the time, 3 years now, to 2025. We subtracted the traffic volumes for the cars going into and out of Jeffrey Elementary, and then we added the higher number of cars that would coming off of Mungertown at the new school site. One note here that we think was important to point out is when you take the Jeffrey School traffic out and add the Green Hill School traffic back in, because of the proximity of Jeffrey School, there's actually a reduction of traffic at the intersection of Green Hill Road at Cops Road. We estimate that would be somewhere of the magnitude of a 50 trip reduction. Usually we don't put this.
Could you go over that point again? So you're saying that when we do the new school, we'll have a reduction at the Cops Road Green Hill intersection. Is that correct?
That is correct. Yes.
Of
As it is
approximately
now,
50 cars.
yes. Yes. And the reason is because you have all of the traffic, whether they're going northeast, northwest, or straight north, would be going through that intersection now. At the Mungertown site, the only cars you're going to get through that intersection are the easterly cars. So it's a smaller percentage of a larger base. And again, usually we don't put this whole table in here, but in this case, I thought it was useful to show essentially at all of these intersections, while you get that very short blip of peaking right at the bell in the afternoon in particular. But for the most part, when you look at the analyticals, the traffic volumes are not the issues around here, are not projected to be the issue. They're all pretty much a level of service C or better. There's one that I would point out is on Mungertown Road at the off-ramp in the morning. It's operating level service C now because of the additional traffic that we would be putting through that intersection. We estimate that coming off that ramp, or not coming off the ramp, going through, left, through, and right, yes, off the ramp, would be level of service E. So it would go from C to E. Now, E is not terrible. Again, it's only for a very short time. There are some things that could be done there in terms of separating right turns and left turns. But our initial recommendation would be that level of service E is probably fine at that location. But for the most part, we don't anticipate that this new school will be generating any significant traffic concerns. The next thing we did was to look at the sidewalks, and really well, let me back up. Sidewalks are a good idea always, particularly at schools. If you look at your complete streets policy, if you look at the complete the bike ped advisory committees, if you look at anything for safe routes to school, sidewalks are a good idea. One of the reasons that we didn't notice many walkers, probably because there's not a good way to walk to school. So sidewalks, very well might induce some walkers. But nonetheless, we said, well, from this school site, it would make sense to see if we could, how far to the south we could connect, and would we be able to connect all the way to the new piece of sidewalk over to high school. So we went through this and walked the area, looking for the feasibility and the things that might get in our way. Along the site frontage, I think sidewalk is pretty easy. I mean, there are some trees that may need to be cleared. And then there's the existing stone wall, depending on where the driveway or driveways come out in the future. We may need to rebuild parts of that stone wall. Part of that wall is falling down anyway. But again, that whole that's one thing that should be a consideration. Going south, it appears that it would be pretty easy to get to the residential neighborhood down there and extend the sidewalk all the way to Darenthal Drive. I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly.
You are.
Going any further than that, you run into some constraints near Nortontown Road, where there's some guide rail and some grade issues. So we wouldn't be able to easily bring that sidewalk all the way down. But this looks like a fairly light lift to get it to where we know there probably are some walkers that might benefit from it. Going north, there's the feasibility of going north is there. There is a significant, and I say significant by stand of trees that as opposed to being a random stand of trees, it appears that there's some method. It's a well-spaced pines. There's also a pole in the area that might cause some headaches, but that is a possibility to get this sidewalk all the way to Green Hill Road. Green Hill Road itself is another story completely. And we can go through each one of these constraints, but as you look, and you could pretty much read from Mungertown Road going right, we have property line encroachments, we have guide rail issues, we have significant brush clearing, we have fences that are in the way, we have most importantly a bridge over the river there that would be a significant improvement that would be needed if a quality sidewalk were to be provided. There's also some grading issues and things of that nature. So there's significant roadblocks, for lack of a better word, and maybe appropriately, to really extending that sidewalk all the way up to the high school driveway. So with all that as background, we do have some recommendations on the sidewalk because we think that even though there are some roadblocks or constraints, the sidewalk network, it's like the old saying, every journey starts with a single step. And we think there are some opportunities to start a sidewalk network in this area. In Orange, we think it's a no-brainer. Along the site frontage, you should put a sidewalk in as this site is developed for a school. In the blue, I think the blue to the south, of course, you'd want to, I don't know how much discussion would be required, but you might want to discuss this with the neighbors that the sidewalk would be in front of them, even though it might be in the public right of way. They will be required to maintain it. And then we talk another optional section to the north. And again, that's a little bit more disruptive. You might have to be a little more ingenious with threading it through some obstacles there. And you might end up ultimately, by threading it through, relying on some private property there. The other thing that a sidewalk here, I think it gives you the opportunity to consider some well-placed crosswalks. I did see some correspondence from neighbors on the west side of Mungertown talking about their mailboxes, for example, and being on the east side. So it does make sense, perhaps where the school driveway is or are, crosswalks could be provided there to make it so that there are some crossings for those residents on the west side. Other recommendations that aren't related to the sidewalks. One at Green Hill Road, at Warpus Road, we do notice that there's a stop sign coming out of Warpus and a stop sign in the eastbound direction, but no stop sign in the westbound direction. There may be a reason for that. We would probably recommend discussing this with the police department, but typically if there's not a reason for it, we would prefer to see 3 stop signs at a 3-way intersection like that. It's just more in line with the expectations of drivers. So that's something that we would recommend. Additionally, at Ridge Road, there's the same condition, and we think police department should be consulted to see if we can maybe make those all-way stop signs. In terms of sight lines, we don't think you'll have a problem at the school driveway. We did some measurements at various points along the site frontage. You can easily achieve sight lines for the posted plus 5 or 10 miles an hour over, depending on where the ultimate driveway is. Our recommendation would be to find out what the actual 85th percentile speeds are, which would dictate what the sight lines should be, and that should be a process that takes place as part of the site planning. Another thing is, again, consider implementing the school zone on Mungertown Road. It's a process you have to go through with the state. You could put up school ahead signs and things of that nature, but if you want to make it an advisory school zone with a speed reduction like you have over at the high school, then that's a process that needs to be gone through with the Office of State Traffic Administration. The last thing is we did a projection using some of the statistics from Jeffrey School of, as you're site planning, what the type of accommodation should be on site. We think it would be important to have 125 staff or visitor vehicle parking, 100 parent vehicle space for pickup drop-off. Now, that could be in a separate parking area, that could be a drop-off loop, it could be a combination of the two. But I think what has to happen is, as you're going through the site planning, it has to be understood how that operation will work, and you have to design for that operation. So for instance, if the school anticipates using a pickup drop-off lane, then you don't need a 100-car parking lot right next to it. But if they want the parents to park in the parking lot, then you don't need the extra wide pickup drop-off lane. So that is it for our recommendations, and that was the end of the slideshow.
Thank you, Steve. I think you did a great job. We know how exciting traffic is for some of us, and I think you went through it very quickly and well on the report. The committee had the report. I'm sure they read it beforehand. So I want to turn it over for the next 5 minutes for any questions they may have, Emily. So why don't you take it over?
Thank you. Thank you, David. It's really helpful. Do you have any questions from the committee here?
Yeah, I do have a question. Thank you for the presentation and thanks for the report. It's very detailed and helpful.
Sure.
Can I ask, do you know and I'm not trying to stump you in any way, there's a reason I'm asking. Do you know the standard like height for regular school buses offhand?
If you're referring, Seth, to the Mungertown Road site,
Yeah.
underpass, the buses go down there already.
Perfect. Okay, I just wanted to make sure.
Yeah, the buses use that site they're at Mungertown in the railroad crossing, Dave, down south of the site, just before Route 1, there's an underpass, and it's low. So a tractor trailer can't get under there, but the buses go under all the time. So.
Right. I just wanted to make sure that we're not restricting ourselves to inflow and outflow through the south approach.
We are not.
Perfect. Thank you.
Yeah, I have a question, Steve Penn here. Do we have any data based on our current bus routes and the density in the neighborhood of the likely numbers of walkers, bike riders? Could there be sufficient numbers that impacts on any of this, or do we have any idea around those numbers?
Well, I don't for this specific school. I can tell you that if we don't get any sidewalks along here, the numbers will continue to be pretty poor in terms of walkers and bikers. If we are able to provide some sidewalk, then those numbers will go up. And in very successful walking neighborhoods that are in this type of environment, if in the nice weather you were to get 10% or so of the students to walk, that would be a very successful number. I don't think you'll approach that because you'll just have the sidewalks only on Mungertown. So it would be really just the close-in draw.
But just to the south of the property, there's 2 residential developments right to Darenthal, and then there's another street right before it. I want to say there's maybe 20 houses there. I'm just guessing, but that's to me, the only draw. I don't know if we come from that far away for an elementary school. It'd be tough to ride the bike on that road and walk unless we put the sidewalks in. I think that's why we recommended the sidewalks, or that's why Dave recommended the sidewalks in those 2 locations. And to the north, there's a few houses.
Okay, thank you.
I have a question, just about the next steps from this. Bill, tell us about what happens next in terms of following up on these recommendations with a successful referendum. Can you talk about that, and if there's anything that you would need from the facilities committee?
Yeah, just to step back, the reason we did the traffic study is because we anticipated some questions whether this site was acceptable to handle the school. And obviously, this recommendations are to make it better for the whole intersections all around it. But I'm not going to speak for Dave, but we can ask him directly. This site, can handle this. And with these recommendations, it will make the traffic better, will reduce at the intersection of Cops Road and Green Hill. So we wanted to do that, I think, as the Board of Education. We will take this report and hand it over to the design team. If the referendum is successful, we'll turn the report over to the firm that is picked to complete the design, and they'll take these recommendations and they'll use it. I'm sure we'll have to do some modest updates with one of the recommendations is to check the speed on the road, and the sight line. We'll make sure that's correct, but the report will be turned over and the recommendations will be considered. They'll have to be reviewed by, which I gave a copy to the town engineer, so he's up to speed with this report. I did not contact the police department or police commission because I think it's too early, but once we get to the next step, that's what we'll do. The engineering department will be contacted, the police department with the professional services that will be hired by the building committee. So this will be very helpful. This report will be very helpful, and they'll be immediately ready to make those recommendations, and then final determination whether they can make the adjustments as recommended. The recommendation is to consider them, not to do it, because you need to study and meet with the engineering department and the police commission because they make the ultimate final decision.
Okay.
Is that helpful to answer your questions?
Yes, that answers my questions exactly. Yes, thank you. So I know we're running up on time here, but I do want to open up for public comment. If there's any members of the public who would like to comment, Wendy?
I'm sorry. Actually, would you mind if I stopped the screen share so I could
Oh,
view
sure.
it a little easier? Oh, thank you very much.
Sorry about that.
No, no problem at all. I didn't want to just take it upon myself to do that. We don't have any hands raised from the audience.
The Q&A, is that something that's already been addressed? I see.
Yes.
Yes.
Anything else for you all here?
No, thank you. Good report.
All right, I
Thanks.
think we're good here. Mr. Sullivan, thank you very much. This is really helpful information. I will give a summary to the full board this evening at our meeting. I appreciate your work.
Great, thank you very much. And Bill, as always, just call me if anything comes up.
Thank you, Dave. Anything for me from from the committee?
No, we're good, Bill. We
All
know
right.
you'll keep us informed.
Yeah, thanks. Have a great night.
Thanks,
Thanks,
Bill.
Bill.
Bye-bye.
Take care. Bye.
Bye-bye.
All right, thank you, Wendy. Meeting adjourned.
You're welcome.